again to this lecture. We just finished with we just completed one of the data frames, which is a list, and we are looking at the next one now, which is a tuple. And so if I want to put a definition of a tuple for you, I will say that a tuple is an ordered collection. It's an ordered collection of items that are immutable. Now, immutable means that once we have created, we cannot change. Once the items have been created, we cannot change. So that's basically the meaning of immutable. And so tuples are amongst the built-in data structures or data types in Python, as we've already discussed above. So if we're talking about the key aspects or key properties of tuples, we'll say that they are ordered, they are immutable, which means we cannot change, they allow for duplicates, This is as compared to other data structures that cannot repeat themselves or do not take duplicates. A good example would be sets do not take duplicates. So items here can be indexed, which means since they are ordered and have fixed positions, we can order them. So we can call this as properties of tuples. I put it this way, and so that's the idea behind tuples. So having seen this, the next thing about tuples is how to create. How do we create tuples? If you want to create a tuple, there are multiple ways. So we say creating tuples. There are multiple ways. The first one would be that I'm creating a tuple. And so the basic syntax would be, if you want to say we're creating a tuple which is contain fruits, you say fruits would be equal to, now we use bracket sign, and we can name our fruits, maybe mangoes, you can have pears, you can have oranges. Now, it is also important to note that they could also take on different data types. So if you put 26 here, and so you don't receive an error. If we say fruits, which we're printing, we'll see that they contain these items. If we print type and we put fruits, it'll tell you there's tuple. So that's one of the things that we're noting about tuples, that tuples give us the possibility. Now there are different ways of creating a tuple. So we look at we look at the different ways that we can create it. You can create a tuple in your work. So let's just say I'm creating a tuple, and the first method is that we're using let's say different ways creating tuples. Okay, we've already set that up. We can say the first one is using parentheses. Parentheses are brackets. Parentheses. And so if I'm using parentheses, we've already created an example here. This is creating tuple using parentheses. So the second method can be that you can create even with that. For instance, if I just create, let's say, points, just as an example, or let's say, points, just an example, and I say I have I have items, maybe 20, 30. If I print type points, type, and I put points, so they still give me tuple, because that's another way of creating a tuple. So that's another dimension that you can use to create tuples. Just give me a second. So one of the ways, as we've seen, is using parentheses. The other one is using creating it directly, and the third way could be that we use tuple itself. So we can say numbers, we're creating numbers, and we say tuple. So we open, and we can pass even a list here. We say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if I print type, and I say numbers, they'll still give us tuples. So those are the different ways you can create tuple. And so you can create tuples by simply trying to pass. Now, if you want to create tuples just using a single item, you must still separate it with a comma. For instance, if I create, let's put it this way, let me give so if I create and I say point as an example, and I say equal to, and I set tuple, and I say 70, and I take equal to, you see that I have an issue. The issue is because if I put comma, the issue here is that I need to put a bracket. So if I put 30 within the bracket, since it's a number, and I print point, if I print type and I put point, now we'll still have a tuple because we have used this to indicate that that's a tuple. But then one of the things I want to indicate, that if you say, we have seen that you can create, let's say if I put tuple and I put 43, and this will be considered as an integer. If I put comma here and I print type, and I pass that in, you see they'll still consider as a tuple because of that command. But if there was no command there, they'll consider it as an integer. Now again, like we've said, tuples are a little bit different from the other data types that we can see. Tuples are different in that they can have mixed items. So we have the possibility of having mixed items. So I want to create a tuple. We already have one that we created above. Yes, so it's a combination of letters and numbers, so we can have mixed items. I think there's one that we created somewhere. Yes, fruits that we created here was mixed. Now this is unlike other data types that we may not have mixed items. So I think that one is just reminding us that tuples can have mixed items. Now if we want to check the aspect of tuples are immutable, we'll say that okay, we have created fruits and now we are trying to add something to it. Let's create a variable which is a tuple in the form of coordinates, and we pass our items there, 20, comma, maybe 40 as the coordinate points. And so we have created that. If I try to put coordinates, you see that I have that number, which gives us that is number 1. But if I say coordinates equal to, which is another way of saying 20, or let's say 15, I want to change it, I'll have an error. Why do I have an error? Say tuple cons no item assigned, because we are trying to add this. That is different from when we are adding. Now we've set tuples at ordered, and to try, let's say we have two tuples, the ordered concept. If you have two tuples, let's say just call it tuple 1, which contains 1, 2, 3, and we have tuple 2, and we have, maybe we have the same items but in reverse order. Let's say we have the same items. We have 3, 2, 1, and we want to check if let's say print, and we put tab 1 is equal to tab 2. I know we have seen this before. Or have so we'll have an error, means false. We'll have false because they are not the same, this one. And why is it so? It's because this works based on position. So this position 1, position 2, and so this, they are reverse positions, although they're the same items. What happens is that tuple doesn't consider that to be the same item. So tuple allows for duplicates. That's one thing we have already indicated, which means if I just come here and add 3, and so it doesn't have an issue. So now you may ask me, why did I put 3 here when, because I've relaunched this as a new tuple, I'm not adding to existing. When I say adding to existing, they assume I'm still creating. But if I was working and I wanted to add a different value somewhere to this tuple 1 without adding here at the place of creation, they will have an issue. So we can always index tuples. For instance, let's say we want to index fruits that we created earlier, fruits, and we have 1. So what is at position 1 is 26. So position 1, let me see something, please. Position 1 of fruits, say fruits, why is it giving us 26? That's giving us 26. Let me try 0 and see, please. Okay. Okay. I see where the problem is. I see where the issue is. Now, just look at it. Mangoes, pears, and oranges here, they are treated as one item. That's why all of them fall in the same bracket, in the same quotation mark. So they're treated as one item. That's why. So, in other words, this fruit contains only 2 items, and so that's why I was really surprised, and thanks for this kind of errors. So it helps us to identify some issue, or maybe I did notice that, but they're treating all of this as one item, all the objects or string as one item, and then so this occupy position 0 and this position 1. So I was a little bit surprised. Why? We can also index. So let's say we want to we also slice, as we saw earlier, slicing. So let's say tuple 1 and our bracket 0 and 3. So we print it, we have the first 3 items because it comes from 0, 1 and then 3 excluded. So that is what we get. That's what we get. So we can also, this is called slicing. This here again is slicing, and here we say is indexing. So slicing and indexing. So that's what you get. Now just to help us see more on slicing and indexing, we can index our item. In order to index our item, it gives us the possibility to index. Let's give again, let me open, expand this. So we want to index, you can index 1, and we said that we're indexing let's say our brackets 3. Now that means everything before. If you need 1 and we say index or slicing 3, 1, that's what we get. We have an empty because we are leaving from behind and coming, so there's nothing in between, so it shows us that it's empty. We don't have numbers in that range. If we put 1 and brackets, we put this, so everything is printed. It means we want to get everything within that. So if you put this, we are indexing all the items in your data set or in a tuple. Again, there are more things we can see on the tuples. For instance, we could create a tuple within a tuple. We can combine 2 tuples together and they will give us an output. So let's say combining 2 tuples. If you're combining 2 tuples like we've seen, you just say tuple 1 plus tuple 2 that we created. If you print it, you see that it brings us the 2 together. So we have the issue of repetition. We could also check items in a tuple. You can check items. For instance, if we wanted to check membership, we use what we have seen earlier, the concept of using in. If we say that if we say, let's just say print as an example, bracket open 0 in, so the answer is false. We're asking if 0 is in tuple. Or let's say we say print, we say 3 in tuple 1. We'll have true because it's a member, so we can use in. We can always check for the length. Length means how many items are there. Length of, we put 1 is 4. So if we go to tuple 1, you see it's 4. Let's check another again. Let's say we had, I think we created a tuple with numbers. Numbers length bracket numbers. So it says also 4 because it has also 4 items. So now these are basic operations that we need to understand. Yes, the basic operations are very important. We may want to, there are other things that we can do with tuples. Yes, there are many other things that can be done with tuples. For instance, we may want to count the number of items, which is basically a little bit different. Count occurrence of an element in Python in tuple. For instance, let's say let's take an example so that it should be explicit. We say that the tuple 1 that we have seen 1 dot count. So what are we counting? 3. So we have 3 appears there 2 times. If we put 1, it appears 1. If you put 0, we say 0 appears 0 times. So that one is very, very important to understand. We've talked about how you can index, how you can check the positions of an item. So I think basically we are looking at tuples, and that's what we've seen with respect to tuples. So some best practices that you should take into account, or when tuples, use tuples when, in other words, when should you use tuples? That's the point I'm trying to make. When should you use tuples? I think one of the situations where you should use tuples, where you are creating data that should not be changed thereafter. So if you created data without the intention that it could change, we gave the example of using phone numbers or ID cards. So if you're working and you're developing a system, then you may be it's ideal for you to use tuples so that the numbers cannot be changed. Another situation is that if you need to retain multiple values from a function, you can also use tuples because they give you a possibility of creating even values that are repeatable. You can use it to create the keys in a dictionary, since it gives you that possibility once they've been created. You don't need to change like variable names and some of those things. And so if you are using that, it will give you. And with that said, there are some situations that if you know that you need to modify, then a list is better. If you know that you have to modify the data set that you have created, then it's preferable use a list. If you know that you need to add items or remove items, it's preferable use a list. And you know that the order of items may change, then a list will still be better because a list gives you the possibility to alter it. Now, that being said, I think that should be principally what we're saying with respect to tuple. So in sum, having seen in this short lecture or in this short video, we basically decided to critically examine what tuples are, and we are saying that they are fundamental data structures in Python, and that provide data that is immutable. Once created, we cannot. So they're ordered, but they're immutable. Once we have created, we cannot. And so we store data that's related and do not need to be changed. We can use it in recurrent situations in a function, and we can always use for coordinates, for colors, things like colors or other fixed data set. Coordinates are a common example because once you have captured the coordinates of a location, it remains fixed. That location cannot move. So basically that is when we can use. And so that is it for the tuples data structure. In the next video, we'll look at another data structure such as the dictionary. and see what it contains. Thank you.